There's a tightness that lives in your body. Not just sometimes, not just in stressful moments, but almost always. A tension that's become so familiar you barely notice it anymore. It sits in your shoulders, pulling them up toward your ears. It lives in your jaw, clenching even when you're not aware of it. It tightens your chest, making your breathing shallow and quick, like you're always preparing for something you can't name. And beneath all of it is this sense that your body won't settle, won't soften, won't let you rest even when you desperately need to. You lie down at night and the tension remains. You try to relax on weekends and your body stays alert, vigilant, ready. It's exhausting in a way that has nothing to do with how much you've done or how hard you've worked. It's the exhaustion of living in a body that feels like it's always braced for impact, always holding, always tight. And no matter what you try, no matter how many stretches or baths or moments of intentional relaxation you create, the tension returns. The tightness comes back. The body refuses to fully let go. And you start to wonder if something is broken. If your nervous system has somehow gotten stuck in a state it was never meant to stay in. If you'll ever feel truly at ease in your own skin again. You've tried things. You've done the breathing exercises, the progressive muscle relaxation, the yoga designed to release tension. You've stretched and moved and intentionally softened. And maybe it helps for a little while. Maybe during the practice itself, there's a moment of release. But then you get up, you go back to your life, and within minutes or hours, the tension returns. The shoulders creep back up. The jaw clenches again. The chest tightens. And now you're not just exhausted from the tension, you're exhausted from trying to fix it. From feeling like your body is something you have to constantly manage, constantly work on, constantly try to calm down. And the more you try to force your body to relax, the more frustrated you become when it won't. The more you focus on releasing the tension, the more aware you become of every place it's hiding. You start to feel like you're fighting your own body, like it's working against you. Like if you could just find the right technique, the right practice, the right way of doing it, you'd finally be able to rest. But nothing seems to work for long. Nothing creates the lasting ease you're reaching for. And beneath the physical exhaustion is something deeper, a quiet desperation, a longing for your body to just be still, to just be calm, to just let you exist without this constant background hum of activation and tension. What if your body isn't broken? What if your nervous system isn't malfunctioning? What if the tension you're carrying isn't a medical problem but a response, a signal, a message about something deeper that's happening in how you're relating to your experience? Alan Watts spent years exploring this territory, not from a clinical perspective, but from a philosophical one. He understood that the body and mind aren't separate, that what happens in consciousness affects what happens in the nervous system, that the way you relate to your thoughts and feelings and experiences registers in your body as either safety or threat. And he saw something that most people miss. The chronic tension, the inability to relax, the nervous system that won't settle, these aren't signs that something is wrong with you. They're signs that your body is responding perfectly, intelligently, to a war you might not even realize you're fighting. Not a war with the external world, though that can be part of it, but a deeper war, an internal one. A constant resistance to what's actually happening in your experience. And the body, feeling this resistance, this fight, this refusal to allow things to be as they are, interprets it as danger and responds accordingly, with tension, with activation, with vigilance. Because from the body's perspective, if you're fighting, there must be something to fight against. If you're resisting, there must be a threat. And so it stays ready, stays alert, stays tense. Not because it's broken, but because it's doing exactly what it's designed to do. responding to the signals it's receiving from how you're relating to life. The body knows what the mind resists. When you push away a feeling you don't want to feel, your body tenses. When you fight a thought you don't want to have, your shoulders tighten. When you resist the reality of this moment, when you wish things were different than they are, when you spend your energy trying to control or change or escape what's actually here, your nervous system responds as if you're under threat. Because resistance is threat. Not physical threat, but psychological threat. The threat of having to experience something you've decided is unacceptable. And your body doesn't distinguish between external danger and internal war. It doesn't know the difference between running from a bear and running from your own feelings. It just knows you're running, just knows you're fighting, just knows you're in a state of opposition to what is. And so it activates, prepares you to fight or flee, tightens your muscles, speeds your heart, shallows your breath. All the things you feel as chronic tension and nervous system dysregulation, all of this is your body trying to help you survive what it perceives as danger. And what it's perceiving as danger, most of the time, is your own resistance to your experience. Notice what happens right now when you resist something. Maybe there's a sound you don't like. Maybe there's a thought that feels uncomfortable. Maybe there's a sensation in your body that you wish wasn't there. And notice what happens when you push against it, when you try to make it go away, when you tense against it. Feel what happens in your shoulders, in your jaw, in your chest. There's a tightening, isn't there? A contraction, a bracing. That's resistance. That's what it feels like in the body. And now notice what happens if you allow it. If you let the sound be there, let the thought move through. Let the sensation exist without fighting it. There's a softening, isn't there? A release. A settling. Not because the external thing changed, but because the internal relationship to it changed. From resistance to allowing. From fight to acceptance. And the body, feeling this shift, begins to ease, begins to release, begins to interpret the situation differently. Not as threat, but as okay. As something that can be here without danger. This is what Watts understood. The nervous system calms not when circumstances become perfect, but when resistance to circumstances dissolves. The body settles not when everything is exactly how you want it, but when you stop fighting what actually is. And here's where it gets tricky. Because you hear this, and immediately you start trying. Trying to allow. Trying not to resist. Trying to make your body relax by forcing yourself to accept things. And this trying, this effort, this is just more resistance. More tension. More activation. Because trying to allow is still doing. Still efforting. Still engaging the part of your nervous system that mobilizes for action. Watts saw this clearly. He understood that you can't force the nervous system to calm down. You can't try your way into relaxation, because trying is tension. Effort is activation. The very act of working to release the tightness is what keeps it in place. It's like trying to fall asleep by forcing yourself to sleep. The force itself prevents what you're reaching for. The effort itself creates more of what you're trying to escape. And this is why all those techniques you've tried, all those practices and exercises, they work for a moment and then stop working. Not because they're bad techniques, but because you're using them as weapons in the war, as tools to force your body to be different than it is. And the body, feeling this force, this pressure, this need for it to change, stays tense. Stays ready. Because it's being treated as a problem. As something wrong, as something that needs fixing. And problems require vigilance. Things that need fixing require effort. And effort is the opposite of rest. So what's the alternative? If you can't try your way into relaxation, if effort creates more tension, if resistance is what's activating the nervous system, then what actually helps? Watts would say it's simpler than you think. So simple it's easy to miss. It's allowing, but not allowing as a technique. Not allowing as something you do. Just allowing as the natural state that remains when you stop doing anything to your experience. When you stop trying to change it, fix it, improve it, or make it different. When you let the tension be there, let the activation be there. Let the tightness and the racing and all of it be exactly as it is without needing it to be otherwise. And this isn't giving up. It isn't resignation. It isn't saying you like the tension or want it to stay. It's something more subtle. It's the recognition that fighting the tension creates more tension. That resisting the activation activates further. That the war itself is what's exhausting you, not the original sensation. And when the war ends, when you stop treating your body as an enemy that needs to be conquered or controlled, something begins to shift. Not always immediately, not like magic, but gradually, naturally, the way a clenched fist opens when you stop trying to keep it closed. The body has its own wisdom, its own intelligence, its own capacity to regulate, to balance, to return to ease. But it can't do this while it's being controlled, while it's being forced, while it's being treated as something that needs constant management and intervention. Watts understood that the body knows how to rest, knows how to release, knows how to settle. It's been doing it your whole life, in moments when you weren't trying to make it happen, when you were absorbed in something you loved, when you laughed without thinking, when you were so present with what you were doing that you forgot to monitor your nervous system. In those moments, the body regulated itself. Not because you did something right, but because you stopped doing anything at all. You stopped trying to control the experience, stopped resisting what was happening. And the body, feeling this absence of force, this space without demand, naturally found its way back to balance. This is what it wants to do. This is what it's always trying to do. Return to rest. Return to ease. Return to the state where energy is conserved rather than constantly expended on tension and vigilance. But it can't do this when you're overriding it, when you're using willpower to force it into shapes it's not ready for. When you're treating every sensation as a problem and every moment of activation as evidence that something is wrong. Your mind races for a reason too. The thoughts that won't slow down, the constant mental activity, the planning and replaying and analyzing that fills every moment, this isn't random. It's not a defect. It's your mind trying to get you somewhere other than where you are. Trying to figure out how to escape this moment, this feeling, this reality that some part of you has decided is unacceptable. Watts saw that the mind speeds up in direct proportion to your resistance to the present. When you're okay with what is, when you're not fighting the reality of this moment, the mind has nowhere to go. Nothing to figure out. Nothing to fix or change or escape from. And it slows naturally. Not because you made it slow, but because the fuel that was driving its speed runs out. The resistance dissolves, and with it, the urgency dissolves. The need to be somewhere else, someone else, experiencing something else, all of that falls away. And what remains is just this, just now. Just the simple fact of being here, in this body, in this moment, without needing it to be different. And presence, real presence, not the idea of being present, but the actual experience of it. This is what calms the nervous system. Not because presence is a technique you apply, but because presence is what's here when you stop resisting. When your attention drops out of the mental noise of past and future and lands in the direct sensory experience of now, something happens in the body. The breath deepens without you making it deepen. The shoulders drop without you forcing them down. The tension begins to release not because you're working on it, but because presence itself is the opposite of resistance. When you're fully here, there's nothing to fight. When you're completely with what is, there's no war. And the body, feeling this, begins to settle, begins to recognize that it's safe, that there's no threat requiring vigilance, that it can finally rest. Not because the circumstances changed, not because the tension was eliminated through effort, but because the internal relationship to experience shifted from resistance to allowing, from fighting to being, from trying to get somewhere else to simply being here. What Watts taught wasn't a practice to master. It wasn't a technique to perfect. It wasn't a series of steps to follow until you get good enough at regulating your nervous system. It was simpler and more immediate than that. It was a recognition. The recognition that you are not your body. You are not your thoughts. You are not the nervous system activation or the mental racing or the chronic tension. You are the awareness in which all of that appears. And this awareness, this consciousness, this knowing presence that's here right now reading these words or hearing this voice, it's never tense, never activated, never racing. It simply is calm, still, at peace, regardless of what's happening in the body or mind. The body can be tense and awareness is spacious. The mind can be racing and awareness is still. The nervous system can be activated and awareness is untouched. And when you recognize yourself as this awareness rather than as the content appearing in it, the entire relationship to tension and activation changes. Not because the sensations disappear, but because you're no longer identified with them. No longer believing they define you or limit you or mean something is wrong. When the tension comes, and it will come, you can notice it. Feel it. Allow it to be there. Not as you, but as something appearing in you, like a cloud passing through the sky. The cloud isn't the sky. The sky holds the cloud, allows it, remains unchanged by it. And you are like the sky, the awareness that holds all experience. The space in which tension and ease, activation and calm, racing and stillness all appear and disappear without ever touching what you actually are. This doesn't mean you'll never feel tension again. Doesn't mean your nervous system will never activate. Doesn't mean your mind will never race. It means that when these things happen, you won't add the second layer of suffering. Won't add the resistance and the judgment and the belief that something is wrong. Won't create tension about the tension. Won't activate your nervous system by fighting the activation. Won't race your mind by trying to slow your mind. You'll simply let it be. Let it move through. Let it exist without making it a problem. And the body, feeling this allowing, begins to learn. Begins to recognize that activation doesn't require fighting. That tension doesn't need more tension. That it's safe to release because no one is forcing it to change. This takes time. Your nervous system has patterns built over years, maybe decades. Your mind has momentum from a lifetime of racing. Your body has learned to hold tension because it learned that the world isn't always safe, that feelings aren't always welcome, that being who you are sometimes brought pain or rejection or loss. All of that is held in the tissues, in the patterns, in the way your system learned to protect you. And you can't think your way out of it. Can't force your way through it. Can't override years of patterning with a weekend of meditation. But you can begin. You can start recognizing when you're resisting, noticing when you're fighting your own experience, catching yourself in the act of trying to force your body to be different. And in that noticing, in that moment of recognition, you can choose differently. Not by doing something, but by stopping the doing. By letting the body be tense if it's tense. Letting the mind race if it's racing. Letting the nervous system activate if it's activating. And trusting, even when it doesn't feel like it's working, that the body knows how to regulate, that the mind knows how to slow, that the nervous system knows how to return to balance when it's given space, when it's not being controlled, when the war finally gently, honestly ends. There's a peace that's not dependent on your state. A calm that doesn't require your nervous system to be regulated. A stillness that exists whether your mind is racing or slow. And this peace, this calm, this stillness, it's what you are. It's been here all along, present through every moment of tension, every racing thought, every activated state. You just couldn't see it because you were so identified with the content, so convinced you were the body, the mind, the nervous system, so sure that if these things weren't right, you weren't right. But Watts saw through this, saw that consciousness itself, awareness itself, the simple fact of being here and knowing you're here, this is untouched by anything that appears in it. The body's tension doesn't make awareness tense. The mind's speed doesn't make awareness race. The nervous system's activation doesn't disturb the fundamental piece of simply being. And when you recognize this, when you see that you are this awareness and not the temporary states it holds, everything changes. Not because you've fixed yourself or achieved some special state or finally gotten your nervous system under control, but because you've stopped believing you needed to. Stopped treating yourself as a problem. Stopped waging war with your own experience. And in that stopping, in that simple cessation of the fight, the body begins to remember what it knew all along. How to rest, how to ease, how to exist without constant vigilance and tension. Not because you made it happen, but because you finally stopped preventing it from happening. Because you got out of the way. Because you recognized what you are and let the body be what it is. And that recognition, that allowing, that is what Watts taught. That is what calms the nervous system. That is what slows the mind. Not through force, not through technique, not through trying, but through the gentle, complete, honest end of the war you've been fighting with yourself. And in that ending, in that peace, the body knows what to do. It settles. It releases. It comes home. Not to where you think it should be, but to where it naturally wants to be when it's finally allowed to simply be.